I'm Coach Sess, motivated and determined, and you are listening to Words with a Mad Coach. Let's look at Next Level Fight Club. So first things first, let's just say shout outs to Brittany Crumpler, to Chris Connor, Lamont Chappelle. What a fantastic show. Don't get me wrong, every show has his speed bumps, but what a fantastic show. I watched it online. That was the first thing that they did that was amazing. They announced that it was a free stream, a free broadcast to anyone who was associated, affiliated, who wanted it. Anyone that would listen, anyone that heard about it, they tuned in, and it was fantastic. I thought the broadcast team with Vince Ferreira and Casey Oxendine was amazing, and Jennifer Oxendine was the cage announcer. She was amazing as well. I thought the guys did a fantastic job of getting all the names of the fighters correct, understanding their backgrounds, who they were, understanding their fight records, their past. It's just so much that I could say about that team and their energy level. So there were a couple points in the fights where it was obvious to me that Casey was familiar with certain fighters. And those fighters would be doing well in a certain point in the fight, and he would have high energy. Oh my God, Fighter X is on his way. He's doing X, Y, and Z. But then if the opponent turned around and changed the fate of the fight, he was just as excited. That's what I loved about these professional broadcasters. They really just called the action as they saw it. They didn't have a favorite. They didn't take a side. They just followed the flow of the fight, and they traded that energy and gave it to the fans who were watching or anyone that could hear the broadcast. Started off with Josh Austin against Justin Stacy. Familiar with Josh Austin being a strong wrestler. He opened up with some strong takedowns, controlled it on the ground pretty much for rounds 1 and 2. And then in round 3, I don't know if it was fatigue or just mental exhaustion, but got himself in a little bit of trouble. And Justin Stacy was able to get to his back. Justin Stacy was trying to work a rear naked choke till the end of the fight. The bell rings. The fight goes to a decision, and Austin walks away with the decision. This is his second amateur fight. So he still has some things he needs to work on, some things that I saw. I'm good friends with his father, so some things I'm going to just relay to him. And they're not necessarily the physical things, the fight things, just some of the mental things that I saw that he could really work on and benefit from. So in the next fight, Quintez Sapp against Greg Bacote. I thought this was a good fight for two amateurs, both 1-0 at the time, coming in and putting it on the line, so to speak. I think what you saw in this fight was Bacote, in my opinion, just was a little bit more aware of who he was, where he was in the fight. He wasn't just a guy who had one-punch power and was looking to land that power. He tended to fight a little bit everywhere. His movement was pretty good, and Sapp just pretty much followed him. But that's expected at the amateur levels. But for amateur fight, it was pretty decent, pretty good. Went to the decision, and Bacote ended up winning that decision. Then my favorite fight of the night just had to be the fight between Mike Lyons and John Schell. So I'm going to do a separate breakdown of this fight later on. But this fight was amazing. So you got the 40-plus John Schell against the 19, 20-year-old Mike Lyons, and this was a very fun fight. They got in, they got after it right off from the beginning. Their cage entrances, the time that they spent, going through the introductions, you could see it on their faces for whatever reason, as if they had something to prove, not to each other. Okay, so I don't think they know each other. I don't think they walk in the same circles. I think they had something to prove to themselves, to their camps, to their girlfriends, to their mothers, to God Almighty. I don't know. But you could see it on their faces. They had something to prove. But this was an amazing fight. John Schell ended up knocking out Mike Lyons via ground and pound. You saw Elias Briley take on Mike Powell. This was a very good fight. I just thought Mike Powell was able to implement his strategy, impose his will, and Elias just could not get off. I don't think that he was able to really set himself down and interrupt anything that Mike was doing and turn the fight around and be effective in the fight. I think Mike just did a good job of shutting down Elias's primary game, which was the stand-up game, because it wasn't so much that he was the better striker. I thought the striking could have been even. I thought Elias might even be a little bit better had he gotten off first, but that's what Mike did. Mike took it away from him by just getting off first. And sometimes that works. You don't have to be the better striker. You just have to be the guy that uses striking more. And Mike Powell was able to get the unanimous decision over Elias Raleigh. Next fight was Shelton Sales against Jose Mahano. I love this fight as well. I love the entire card. I was well aware of who a lot of teams were and well aware of who a lot of the fighters were. So this was a very good card. But getting back to it, Shelton Sales against Mahano, somewhere in the second round, which probably was the biggest factor in the fight, Mahano was able to land a very good hook to Shelton. I can't remember if Shelton was anticipating a kick and went to check it, or he was trying to initiate a kick of his own. But Mahano caught him. Shelton goes down. Mahano goes to his back and tries to initiate a rear naked choke. This is one of those fights where you have to make choices and you say, do I go for the choke or do I just corral his back and work strikes? It all depends on the way you train, how strong you think you are from either position. He goes for the choke. Shelton's able to reverse it. He's able to escape it, rather, and get back to his feet, regain his composure, and then ultimately takes Mahano down and finishes him via ground and pound. So let's go ahead to the pro card. Adelaide Edwards against David Moore. This was young man versus the old lion. Young lion versus old lion. David coming in 3-2. Adelaide at 1-0. This pretty much was just consistent with what you thought it would be, with Edwards coming from a wrestling background, getting into his range, finding his distance, taking Moore down, and he was able to finish Moore via ground and pound. Next fight was Hannah Cyphers against Jillian Roberts. Going into the fight, so it just looked like Hannah started off, for whatever reason, just doing too much too soon. You know, just charging across. I thought the strategy for Hannah would be to fight in spurts, pick her moment, control the range, control the distance. When you're the striker and the other person is not necessarily known for their striking, I think you can do that. You can implement that as a strategy. You just you fight in spurts whenever you want to. Look at John Jones, because he controls the distance so well and the range so well. He just can do that whenever he wants, and it forces everybody else to pretty much counter him. So pretty much he ends up avoiding any clinches or grappling if he doesn't want to engage. And I thought that would be the strategy here, because Hannah is a very strong striker. Been in the gym with her, and she, especially with men relative to her own size, I've seen her back those guys up. So I thought it was a little surprising that she would come out engaging all the way and closing the distance and getting into a clinching and grappling type scenario, which ultimately just led to her doom, in my opinion. She ended up getting taken down, and ultimately, and I believe it was in the second round, was finished via choke. And then we had Chase Gamble taking on Jeremy Perdue. Jeremy Perdue coming out of Team Rock Charlotte. Wayne Martin, Bart Weeks, you guys do an awesome job up there. Chase Campbell coming out of Jeff Jimmo's gym. Wow, this was a very, very, very good fight. But Jeremy just looked like a juggernaut. You know, just seeing this guy, ever since Jeremy got his first win over one of our own teammates, Nick Grady, a couple years ago, this guy's really just refocused and taken his game to another level. He was able to win here via guillotine choke from the guard, feeling that comfortable. against a guy coming from a very strong gym known for their jiu-jitsu or their grappling, and for him to finish off his back, which is risky, had Chase been able to posture up and just start, raining bombs down on him, very risky move, but I thought it was impressive that Jeremy finished in that manner. And like I said, this guy's refocused. He's doing everything right, traveling around, going to different gyms. I follow his posts on Facebook. You should too. You should follow all these guys, as a matter of fact, and just keep up with the scene, because this is that new breed. This is that new generation of fighters, and you want to see where their careers go, because by some chance somebody on this list is going to be a Bellator, a UFC fighter, or King of the Cage. You're going to see them in the headlines. So shout out, props to Team Rock Charlotte and Jeremy Perdue. Good fight. Then the main event was Dewan Owens taking on Marcus Daniels. So I wanna go ahead and take responsibility for Marcus's split decision loss. Here's why. Okay, so Dewan fought in a manner that I thought was going to be consistent with the way that he's fought all throughout these last 4 or 5 years. And the reason I thought that is because, for one, just as human beings, we tend to change, every 3 to 4 or 5 years. And so I knew that I was kind of in that window where Dewan had been doing things a certain way by looking at his fights. And I felt like, well, this is the way to fight him. And where I failed was I didn't attend the event. I did not relay this message clearly to the team. I gave instructions. However, I wasn't very clear on a second part. So in my opinion, Marcus Daniels outstruck Dewan Owens standing on their feet. The problem was that Marcus continued to close the distance and get into a clinching and grappling scenario with Dewan. And this is one of those fights where, again, just where your fight IQ just has to step in. Even if you think you are just as good as the other person, it doesn't mean that you should fight in that range. You should fight in the range where you're getting the least amount of resistance and able and are allowed to implement more of your strategy. And I don't think that happened. And I should have been a bit more clear on where Marcus should have been fighting. I gave instructions, but they may have been somewhat vague. So I have to take responsibility for the fight. But nonetheless, it was still a very good fight. You take a guy like Marcus Daniels, who's been off the scene for quite some time, as mentioned by the broadcast. They kept saying, he hasn't fought since 2013 in the civilian realm. That's one of the reasons why I was having such a hard time finding Marcus fights on other events. They just didn't want to deal with an older fighter who had been gone away from the game. So again, big ups to Dewan for taking the fight. Big ups to Next Level for allowing the fight to happen. With 4 years layoff, nowhere near the experience level that Dewan has. Dewan's fought on Access TV. He's fought in Raqqa, international events. The guy is worldwide, and he's ranked 32 overall, and in the Southeast area. And Marcus has no name, no reputation. I think Marcus made a good account of himself, really showing what his skill sets were, his abilities were, being able to go in there and prove that he can handle a main event status, even in a losing effort. It was still a very good fight. This was a Rocky against Apollo Creed, so to speak, and Marcus played that role, and just put on a very memorable fight. And in my opinion, what this does is now promoters look at Marcus and say, okay, this is a guy who can fight. He can handle himself. He takes the game serious. He trains hard, and that's going to allow the promoters to put him on the card. And if they need another main event somewhere, I think Marcus Daniels is ready to go. So a very good show overall. Next Level Fight Club, you did the damn thing, as the saying goes. And I look forward to your next one in, I believe they said September. So this has been Coach Sess, and you've had words with a Mad Coach, and I'm out.